Disney, as the Florida Senate has passed a bill to eliminate Disney's special tax district, which is, in all due essentiality, a huge portion of Florida which the Disney Corporation rules as their own personal fiefdom. Literally, with their own fire department, their own police department, their own infrastructure, and where the Disney Corporation pays taxes to itself. It's a pretty goddamn big deal, you see, this special cancellation. Now, bear you in mind, theoretically, it has only passed by the Senate right now, and will also have to be ratified in the House, but as that is Republican-led, that is in all due likelihood a simple formality. And why is this such a very, very big deal? Well, you see, Disney has, for quite a while now, been involved in basically everything. It's one of those American giga corporations, which in this case has a, well, literal mini-nation all of its very own. And it has no longer been satisfied with merely keeping all of its fingers and thumbs involved in everyone else's pies in entertainment and business. It has also steadily become more and more involved in politics. Things come to a head, particularly in Florida, with the anti-grooming bill, which the progressive left has named the Don't Say Gay bill, which is an interesting cell phone, but oh well, details and all that. And Disney has been one of the leaders in opposition to this bill. Now, a private corporation should be very, very careful whenever it begins involving itself with the government of an actual nation, or in this case, a state, as it turns out that, well, politicians might not find this to be particularly funny in the long run, as this is also a very much so an ideologically motivated opposition on behalf of Disney, and they have become one of the primary propaganda arms of the movement trying to oppose the bill. Basically, they are trying to become an opposition political party without having any political responsibility. You can't vote Disney out of power like you can the Governor Ron DeSantis, for example. You can only accept them enforcing their will upon the electorate and the elected representatives. This is not how a democracy is supposed to function, and honestly, I am entirely fine with this. In fact, I am giddy with joy and laughter at this, because this is one of the first examples of the Republicans, the opposition, our side, quote unquote, deciding, you know what? Okay, we're going to start playing by your rules, right? You want to cancel people? You want to go and get rid of people's jobs and livelihoods? Well, two people can play that particular game, as is now being exemplified with the Disney Corporation. Again, bearing in mind, nothing is set in stone just yet, and Disney will undoubtedly try to challenge this in a court of law as well. Because if they do lose their special status, not only will this cost them God only knows how many millions, probably in the tens of millions of dollars in additional tax expenses, but they will also lose all of their special privileges. And here's the thing too, Disney earned those special privileges back in the 60s, I believe, something like that, when Disney World was first constructed. Disney World today is an enormous theme park, bringing in, what, hundreds of thousands, now probably more like millions upon millions of people every year. It is a tremendous boon to the Florida economy, and it was built on completely worthless land, the overwhelming majority of which was bugs and swamps of interest to nobody but alligators and Walt Disney, I guess. So yes, Disney did absolutely earn these privileges back in the day, but that was when they were a private corporation, and they gained all of these benefits in, well, a corporation with the state. They went like, okay, we want to do business here, but we're going to need some special considerations because we're planning something absolutely massive. We can't come to you every time we need to build the new carousel, or every time we need to renovate the Disney castle. And so the government went like, okay, right, well, you're going to be a boon to our economy, you're going to use basically pointless lands anyways, so let's sit down and work something out. And they did, and it worked out to both parties' enormous benefit. However, as the Disney Corporation becomes more and more political, inevitably, their paths aligned once more in a considerably less conciliatory fashion, as it turned out. As mentioned here, the measure does still need to pass the GOP-led House, but again, formality, and it will potentially deliver a blow to the company's operation. Oh, it absolutely will. You may also notice here the mentions of Reedy Creek Improvement District. That is the area which, a part of which Disney has taken over, which has all of these special rules and privileges. I mentioned also the idea of building and renovation. This is one of the big ones, because the taxes, well, you know, it's an extra expenditure, but compared to the total income of Disney World, it probably wouldn't be all that big of a deal. However, this is a big one. Now they will have to rely on the government of Florida to provide them with everything else they need, including power, water treatment, filtration, sewage, etc., etc. And this in turn means that whenever they want to do anything, like expand a sewer line to accommodate a new hotel, or building that new hotel, or even a new kiosk or new attraction, etc., they need to apply for permission from the Florida government. Right now, I'm thinking the powers that be might not be particularly fond of Disney, as it turns out, giving them the ability to grab Disney by the nuts and squeeze ever so tightly, which hopefully will also encourage the company to go, you know what? We just want to make funny mouse creatures dance through the streets. That's pretty much all we want to do, and we want to earn money. Perhaps we should stay out of the way of the actual governments of the state. That'd be lovely, wouldn't it? This can also, however, lead to some other problems as well. This is a radical move from Florida too, because, well, they're now going to have to take over all of these things. They're going to have to run it. They're going to have to connect it to already existing system. They are going to have to provide sewage services, firefighting services, electricity, power, maintenance, all of this. They are going to have to evaluate pretty much the entire park and figure out what can and cannot exist, what needs to be rebuilt, what needs to be torn down, what is compliant with structures and rules and regulations, and yada yada yada. Plus, potentially, I've heard some rumors that the area is in quite a bit of debt, and if the area is dissolved, what happens to that debt? There is always the possibility that it'll be moved back over onto the state, which would be unfortunate, to put it mildly. Alternatively, the government might also say, well, no, that was Disney. That was Disney's owning. That was them running and operating it, so surely they keep all of that, right? We're just responsible for the running of the park and everything else today. Who knows? But I also believe that this is very much so a proportional response, to be honest here. The so-called Don't Say Gay bill, which is a misnomer if I've ever heard one, the only thing it really does is say that, hey, teachers, you don't get to teach your ideologically bent nonsense in schools. Simple as. And this is not a rarity. This is not aimed purely, as they try to show it, as something aimed against the LGBT community. This is not an anti-gay bill. This is merely a you don't get to propagandize children bill. And it isn't unique either. You don't get to propagandize children with religion in schools either. As I understand it, in Florida, they do have a bill basically banning that as well. This isn't a specific thing targeted only at a specific group or a specific political ideology. You aren't allowed, like, the Republicans either can't go to school and go, right, so, we'd like to teach only a Republican-approved talking points here, okay? The Civil War, for example, we're gonna really hammer home the point that the Democrats were the slave owners, and the Republicans were the good guys, etc., etc. This is an entirely reasonable thing to do in a school, which is supposed to be as neutral and nurturing of an environment as humanly possible. When then a private corporation decides to come and intervene with this, again, bearing in mind that a private corporation cannot be voted out, you have no power over it whatsoever, then it is entirely fine for the government to go, okay, right, you've been trying to indoctrinate our children into your way of thinking. Very well, you're trying to poison the ground, so we are going to be salting yours in return. That is entirely proportional. Entirely fine. I see no problems with it whatsoever. Is it drastic? Oh, sure, hell, it's drastic. Is it strident? Absolutely. Is it even potentially a bit unfair to Disney? Yes. Yet nevertheless, America is heading far too much in the direction of more and more giga corporations gaining more and more political power and influence. This is a genuine threat to the American system and its very democracy. We're no longer talking about nonsense like freedom of speech being a threat to democracy, a genuine topic in the US over the course of the last decade or so. We are now talking about genuine unaccountable forces, corporations moving into politics and trying to influence it simply via money. Something that obviously should not be allowed. Now, sure, the American democracy is hardly flawless in that regard as well when it comes to stuff like lobbying, etc., but one step at a time, I do suppose. Now, again, it's not even sure that this will actually happen, because, as I mentioned, there will be legal challenges, and as I understand it as well, apparently a special district can only be cancelled in the same way that it was created, and it was not created via Senate decree, so theoretically, the Florida government might actually be committing a crime here, or an error of procedure, or whatever you wish to call it, which I'm sure the Disney Corporation would be more than eager to argue in court of law. Furthermore, this is only a thing now. This is basically a promise of something that will happen next year, June or July 2023, I believe, and a lot can happen in between then and now. Maybe this is simply a power play from the government going, hey, you know what, Disney, piss off. And if Disney then bows down, scrapes their heads firmly against the floor and goes, yes, massa, and backs quietly out the door, maybe all of this will simply disappear once more. Which, honestly, would be to the benefit of literally everyone. Well, here's the thing. The Disney Corporation is not necessarily a bad corporation. Its sheer scale and size is certainly negative in my opinion, as is its questing tendrils, but Disney itself used to be a pretty cool company. Until it turned into the wokest monster that it is today. If it could simply just return to being a simple corporation, I would have a hell of a lot fewer problems with it. Let's see how it works out. I do think that this is, however, the right move to make, and a nice little warning shot, a cannon shot across the bow to tell Disney to stay in their lane, hopefully. Until next time, I've been Arch, thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day. And remember, fuck Disney.